Good afternoon, Evil, and I will tell you one story of a good viewing. It arrived on a rain-slick Wednesday, wrapped in mold-stained canvas, hauled in by two deliverymen who refused to meet the eyes of the homeowner. Eliza Moreau had inherited the mirror from her great-uncle Vincent, a reclusive man whose name was uttered only in cautionary tones at family gatherings. The will had been brief: to Eliza, I leave the ancestral mirror. Guard it well. Never cover it. Never move it from its place. Never turn your back to it after dark. Instructions so strange they might have been laughed at, had they not been written in Vincent's shaky hand, with the last word dark smudged and clawed through the parchment like it had been scratched by frantic fingers. The mirror was tall, 7 feet at least, framed in blackened mahogany twisted into shapes that almost resembled vines or bones. Eliza placed it in the hallway outside her bedroom. Its glass was unervingly clear, yet somehow darker than it should have been, like looking into water rather than a mirror. She saw her reflection as expected, but there was something in the eyes, not wrong exactly, but other. Like the reflection was watching her, not merely mimicking. The first few nights were uneventful, though she began sleeping with the door shut. She told herself it was because of drafts. But then came the 5th night. She'd fallen asleep reading, the book open on her chest. A sudden coldness woke her, cold like something ancient breathing on her spine. The door creaked. She froze. The mirror stood outside, unmoved. Her reflection, barely visible through the narrow crack of the open door, should not have been visible at all. She was lying in bed after all. Yet, she saw herself standing in front of the mirror, face slack, eyes too wide, mouth parted just slightly as if listening. Eliza sat up, heart hammering, and the reflection vanished. She didn't sleep again that night. The changes began subtly. Her reflection began lagging just slightly. When she raised her hand, it paused for a blink before copying. If she smiled, it smiled back just a beat too late. But worst was when she tried to turn away quickly. Sometimes it didn't turn at all, continuing to watch her from the corner of her eye. She filmed it once using her phone. A simple wave, a spin, a hop. Played back the footage, normal. Everything mirrored as it should be. But when she watched it a second time, the reflection didn't wave. It didn't spin. It just stood there, still watching her perform like a fool. When she paused the video, the reflection blinked. Eliza dropped her phone. The screen cracked like splintered ice. A week passed, then 2. She began talking to it. First, it was a joke. Nervous banter to fill the space. You're getting slow, girl, she'd say. The mirror's Eliza would grin with something like teeth. Then came the night she heard laughter. Her own voice, just outside the door. She opened it, heart thudding. Nothing. Just the mirror and the hallway. But her reflection was no longer in sync. It stood with one hand behind its back, while she stood with both arms at her sides. Hello? She whispered. The reflection nodded. Eliza backed into the room and shut the door, not noticing until the next morning that her own eyes were ringed with purple shadows. Mirror bruises, she would call them later. She reached out to an antique expert, a man named Dr. Howard Fenwick who specialized in cursed objects, though he hated the term. A mirror of ancestral binding? He murmured, examining the photos she sent him. These are rare, very rare, typically Eastern European in origin, meant to reflect not the self, but the soul. I think it's broken, Eliza whispered. No, said Fenwick. It's awake. That's much worse. He offered to come examine it in person. That night he didn't show. Eliza called his number. A stranger answered. Fenwick had been found dead in his study, eyes removed, mirror shards embedded in his palms like stigmata. After that, Eliza started locking her bedroom door at night. But the lock only lasted so long. She was dreaming. Cold places, stone staircases, long mirrors stretching forever in both directions. In the dream, she saw herself at the bottom of a well, floating in darkness, face turned up to the light. When she woke, the mirror was inside her room. It stood at the foot of the bed, silent, heavy, impossibly unmoved. But she hadn't brought it in. Eliza screamed. Her phone was dead. She grabbed the bedsheet and covered the mirror, shoving it toward the hall. But her hand sank into something soft. She pulled the sheet away, and for a split second, just long enough, she saw her reflection smile at her with 2 rows of teeth, long and serrated like a lanternfish. The mirror fell to the floor. Didn't break. Eliza began to unravel. She avoided the mirror now, kept her back to it always. But still, the reflections multiplied. One in the hallway as before. One in the bathroom. One in the living room TV even when it was off. They weren't synchronized anymore. She'd catch glimpses, one scratching at its cheek until blood poured down, one grinning wide and bloody, another whispering to something off-screen. They watched her. Always watched. It got worse. One night, she saw herself in the mirror, but the real her had no memory of the actions. The reflection was dragging something, a bundle, into the room. Bloody tarp. Heavy. She screamed and looked behind her, but there was nothing. When she looked back, the reflection just winked. Then came the blood. Not hers. Not from any visible wound. It leaked from under the mirror like water from a broken pipe. Thick. Black-red. Smelling of copper and old dirt. She tried to call the police. The line went dead the moment she said, "Mirror." Her laptop? Frozen on a black screen with her face staring back at her. Not blinking. Not breathing. She smashed it. The mirrors in the house began distorting. Warping. Showing things that couldn't be there. People she didn't know staring back at her. Children with empty eyes. An old woman whose face peeled like old wallpaper, layer by layer, until only a grin remained. On the final night of part 1, Eliza stood before the mirror, candle in hand. "I know you're listening," she said. Her reflection raised its candle in sync. "What do you want?" The reflection tilted its head. Then it opened its mouth and Eliza heard her own voice whispering from behind her. "Let me in." The candle blew out. Behind her, footsteps. Her last thought before blacking out was this. The reflection wasn't trying to escape. It was trying to replace her. Eliza awoke on the cold floor, the night air pressing through the cracks of her boarded window. The hallway beyond was silent except for the soft drip of congealing blood pooling beneath the mirror. She dared not move, fearing the slightest shift would unleash that hush into something far worse. Hours passed like spilled sand, grain by silent grain. When morning light finally crept beneath the door, Eliza rose on trembling legs. The mirror lay face down in a widening puddle. She steeled herself, yanked it upright, and recoiled. The glass was gone, replaced by a solid void, a hole of polished nothingness. She heard it before she saw it, the faint, rasping voice of someone breathing on the other side. "Eliza." She stumbled back. The voice warped echoed. It was her voice. Her reflection's voice. But from inside the mirror. She looked down, her hands trembled, skin ashen. A smear of blood, hers, marked her palm. She wiped it on her shirt. Nothing remained. Over the next days, the void pulsed. Like a heartbeat. It grew warmer, the air in the hall grew thick. She felt drawn toward it as if a part of her already lay on the other side. Each time she passed, she'd catch a flicker, a memory, perhaps, of a life that wasn't hers. Laughter at a dinner table not her own, hands clasped in prayer before an altar of bone, a child's whispered "mama" in a voice she did not recognize. Eliza tried to flee. She packed essentials, filled her car. But no matter how far she drove, the mirror reappeared at home in the front hall upon her return. Night after night she tried to sleep at friends' houses, motels, always returned to the same nightmare, that void, beckoning. It wasn't until she found the journal that she understood. Beneath a loose floorboard in her study lay Vincent's chipped leather-bound tome, pages brittle with age. Scrawled in Vincent's precise hand were instructions for a ritual of reflection transcendence, a rite to bind one's ancestral soul to the world of the living by exchanging places with one's reflection. That was the mirror's purpose, a portal to a mirrored realm where the dead lingered, yearning to seize life beyond glass. She read on, teeth clenched. The ritual required blood, ancestral blood, soaked into a bone chalice, and a final invocation in the mirror's tongue, which Vincent meticulously transcribed phonetically. Eliza flinched as she reached the last page. A single line was scrawled in frantic black. "Abort before sunset on the 7th day, or the reflection will claim dominion." Sunset tonight. Fragments of her reflection crept into the real world. First the whispers, voices from behind the walls, echoing hunts in a forest she'd never seen. Then the sightings, her silhouette in the backyard at dusk, staring in through the window, though when she raced outside, nothing answered but the moon. At dawn, the shrubs were clawed as if by invisible hands. She barricaded doors and windows, piled furniture against the front. But still, at precisely 6 hours before sunset, the mirror began to bleed glass shards like tears. Each one trembled, quivering before falling to the floor. Eliza watched in horror as they formed shapes, hands, faces, bodies, reflections streaming outward, crossing the threshold between worlds. She gathered her courage as the sky bruised purple with the imminent sun's descent. In the study, she prepared the chalice, a fragment of the mirror's wooden frame carved into a vessel, and pricked her finger until blood welled. The moment the drop fell into the chalice, the house groaned. The floorboards cracked. The walls pulsed. She held the book open at the invocation, voice shaking, and recited the syllables that felt like nails on her tongue. Behind her, the void inside the mirror blinked into existence again. Through it, she saw the mirrored realm. A hall of infinite reflections, all her doubles, all twisted and starving. They pressed against the glass, eyes wide, mouths agape. Their voices, her voice, echoed, "Let me in." She lifted the chalice high, the blood catching the dying light. "Be gone!" she cried in the mirror's tongue, pouring the blood into its void. A deafening crack filled the air as the void reached out, a ripple of dark water flooding toward her. For a moment, time froze. Eliza's heart thundered. Then, a flash of brilliant light exploded from the mirror's depth. She screamed as the light engulfed her, burning eyes and lungs with icy flame. She felt herself wrenched forward, as though dragged through viscous darkness. Then silence. She opened her eyes to morning. The sun shone weak through the blinds. The mirror lay shattered in 100 pieces. The void was gone, her reflections normal, wherever they caught her image. She touched her cheek, her hands, alive, whole. Relief washed through her until she noticed the final entry in Vincent's journal. Binding broken, but beware. A reflection sealed never truly dies. It grows hungry in the dark. Below, in letters she had not written, she saw a final phrase in tremulous ink. "We will meet again." Eliza swept the splintered glass into a rusted bucket, every shard glittering like a fallen star. She buried them deep in the woods beyond her home, the journal hidden beneath the earth. At night, she still glimpses movement in mirrors, an afterimage, a hesitation, a pulse of something watching from just beyond the surface. Sometimes, in her dreams, she feels a breath at her ear and hears her own voice say, "Welcome back." And in that moment, she knows the mirror is only sleeping. Thank you very much. See you all in the next video.